I want to talk about the John Cena Cody Rhodes feud because the last time we talked, I was skeptical and I had complaints. But I am not a negative Nelly. I am not a persistently depressed negative person. I am not somebody who just because I like it, it means it's bad. I am now done throwing shade at everyone that I call my friend. I am somebody who I can admit when I'm wrong, and I can admit when something is good. And I have to say, first of all, John Cena's first promo when he explained why he turned, when he broke up with the fans, is everything I either said or wanted to say to my ex-wife. That promo was a little too real. That was
Jesus.
That was some shit. Right down to what do we get? What do we get? You get nothing. I more or less had a similar conversation with her. That was something like that. That was as far as like a guy finally finding his inner strength and breaking up with a narcissist. That was fucking brilliant. John Cena might be my new favorite heel character, and I wasn't quite sure what to think of his heel persona.
That or your spirit animal.
And now he's my spirit animal. It's hard to boo him when I see your side of this. The fans are awful. You got to remember, Harry Broadhurst, you're a wrestling fan, right?
I've been known to watch the graps on occasion.
Okay. So you remember back in the day, back when we were kids. We're not kids anymore. And these were the same fans who thought it would be a good idea to hit a child in the head with a Singapore cane, drove poor Mick Fury into insanity.
King Dewey.
Yeah, and then as if they couldn't be, talked intelligently to, doubled down on that and decided that Rocky Maivia, who was not the most interesting of characters, he was kind of, a milk toast, not milk white baby face, if you will, should die. He was so not entertaining. He was so not what people wanted. They just said, die, Rocky, die, and forced him into, the Nation of Domination. Which is more or less.
Meanwhile, WCW was pushing its own talentless Samoan named Prince Iaukea.
I like Prince Iaukea.
He got better when he had the Prince no ripoff gimmick, but as basic babyface 3,721, he was awful.
All I remember was the broad he was with.
Paisley, Charmel.
Yeah, talking about, I think it was Haku. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of something different. When they were the one guy that they rebranded as Kiwi, and she was
Alan Funk.
Yeah, and she was referring to him as the Kiwi.
The Kiwi.
Yeah. Anywho,
WCW loved their third person.
They really did. The other thing I was thinking about was Haku when he had the pushed out afro, and they referred to him as Operation Bared Hair Day. But anyway, so fans wishing death on people being a staple of pro wrestling, leading to John Cena saying, "I came out here, and again, I'm going to try to not project too much. I gave you everything. I did everything for you. I just wanted you to like me, and nothing was ever enough. You treated me awfully. I don't need this anymore. I'm breaking up with you. You get nothing. Good day." And I swooned and fell over, Harry Broadhurst. It was a brilliant promo.
So my only concern with Cena's promo was it felt very heel 101 at the start.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was kind of paint by numbers.
Okay.
However, him actually going in and referencing the fact that the new gear and the new music and everything, that what do we get?
What do we get? What do we get? You get nothing.
I will admit that did pop me because there are a lot of people who are anticipating that Cena was going to have new music. Cena was going to start wearing different custom gear. Cena was going to start coming out and acting a different. It
was going to be Darth Cena. Like you were going to get, the best example of this was the girl who from NXT who came over. Where she turned, the one where it was at War Games where she turned on her Australian buddy.
Dakota Kai.
Yeah, and she and the next night, her hair was greasy and slicked back, and we were referring to her as Darth Kai.
I've always been a fan of Cap Coda, so
Okay, it's not a matter of being a fan or not a fan. It was she suddenly
the
had this very very different persona change, and it was just like,
the immediate tectonic shift in the character. No, I get what you're
yeah,
saying.
that's my point. Is that's why I like what Cena's do. This feels more natural. Like this feels like I brought up Mick Foley. You know, if when Mick Foley did the King Dewey thing, and and turned on the fans in ECW, he didn't stop being Mick Foley. He didn't do anything differently. He was still being himself, but he was like, "You people are awful. I don't want you to like me. If you like me, I must be bad too." He just kept being himself.
The anti-hardcore ECW run, which, by the
Right.
way, if anybody's watching this, and I know that we're kind of way off the reservation here, but if anybody's watching this that hasn't seen the anti-hardcore Foley stuff from ECW, you owe it to yourself to do so. It is a masterclass in pro wrestling psychology.
Yeah, but I think that's more of the arena in which John Cena is playing in, which I like, because if John Cena had become, it's the very funny picture everyone puts up is during the COVID WrestleMania where he does the dream match, and
The Firefly Funhouse against Bray. I was
yeah,
actually going to bring that up.
and he comes out in the NWO shirt. As funny as that looked, I don't want that, and I don't think it would have worked. I think what's even more hilarious is that they decided to do a European tour during all of this. So he's coming out in specialized European country gear for wherever Raw is taking place, despite the fact that he's playing this heel character that isn't really supposed to be selling merch. And I just think that's brilliant.
Well, obviously, I think the decision to turn Cena was kind of last minute,
Mm-hmm.
and that the merchandise was already made. So if it's made, we might as well try to sell it.
Considering people buy heel merchandise, I mean,
we're at a time and age in pro wrestling where babyface and heel doesn't matter in regards to merchandise sales.
It hasn't for 20 years, Harry. People were buying the NWO merchandise when they were murdering guys in the ring and throwing them into
That's because everybody
with bats.
Everybody loves a cool heel.
Right. So again, I think there are people who, if you make a nice shirt that people want to wear and doesn't look embarrassing, then it doesn't really matter if your character's a bad guy or a good guy.
Steve Austin was technically a heel when Austin 316 was a thing.
Yeah, the next night, the night after King of the Ring '96.
The signs.
Yeah, the entire fucking crowd with Austin 316 signs. And within like a day or within like a week or so of that incident, they had the T-shirt out there. By the time he wins that title, really by the time he switched face, which he never really changed characters. He just started fighting bad guys instead of good guys, which was what?
I want to say WrestleMania 97, the match against Brett, the double turn.
Yeah, I would say you're right about that, because I'm trying to figure out like what the rest of his feuds were in '96.
Mostly he feuded with Mark Murrow in '96, because I remember he had the incident where Murrow put him in the hospital at King of the Ring because of the errant kick.
Well, okay, there's Savio Vega around the time that he switches over from Ringmaster to Steve Austin.
Right.
There's King of the Ring, and that's Jake.
And Mark Murrow, because I think he gets Murrow again. He wrestles Yokozuna at SummerSlam on the free-for-all. And the match at the ring rope break.
Somewhere in all of this is Pillman's got a gun.
I think that's 97, actually.
I got to go back. I feel like it was 96. Like, they were still doing...
I can Google that real quick.
Like, heel Steve Austin. And the thing of it was, and this is going to go back to Cena in just a moment, in case everyone's like, what the fuck are they talking about? You got to remember, the stuff they had Steve doing was still bad guy stuff. When Brian Pillman was out and he did a home invasion, the home invasion was supposed to tell the fans, this is a bad person. He's very dangerous. When Pillman pulled a gun on him, it was in self-defense, as crazy as that was. So as I recall,
you are correct. It was 96.
What I thought, like 90, because 97, he's doing the stuff with the Hart Foundation. and
which
so
is where I conflagrated the Pillman thing, because with Pillman's loose association with the New Heart Foundation.
Yeah, no, 96. Like I said, 96. Austin's heel run is he's doing Pillman's Got a Gun. He's
November 94 or November 4th, 1996 for Pillman's Got a Gun.
Right. And then by the time we get to the Royal Rumble, he's still, I mean, people are still cheering him, though, is the point of this entire side tangent. Despite the fact that he was a heel, despite the fact that he was doing home invasions, despite the fact that he's going to go into the Royal Rumble, get eliminated, and then promptly sneak back in and eliminate 3 other guys, causing the Final Four pay-per-view alongside of I've Lost My Smile. You can get away with selling merchandise and being a popular heel. Steve Austin showed the template for it, as did the NWO. That's what makes that whole era of wrestling stand out to me, was it was really the beginning of like the merchandisable heel, the
kind of the fans' choice in terms of like who's getting merch, who's getting opportunities. Like I know that the sex pervert, we don't really want to give him a lot of credit.
Get out of here, you rapist.
We don't want to give him a lot of credit, but there were certain times where he definitely had his finger on the pulse of the wrestling fan there, and you could see that with people like Austin going on the superstar run that he did. People like Rock, first, like you were saying, the Die Rocky Die leading to his heel turn, and then the natural baby facing of Rock while he was a member of the Nation because of the fact that he was just so goddamn entertaining.
So we've had people in and out of here. So Gavin was saying, he's been participating. He said Prince Aki Maki. And we had Jason, who's been hanging out with us. He said he had Mankind and Taker in 96. And then Lexus King was in fear for his life during the home invasion. Fantastic.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Also, if you'll remember, DX were heels.
Originally, yes, because of the feud between Shawn and Taker.
Yeah. Well, even when let's forget about the Shawn Triple H stuff. The night after WrestleMania, after Shawn goes away after WrestleMania 14 in Boston, the next night X-Pac defects from WCW and he's teams up with Triple H. That same night, the New Age Outlaws fought a rematch against Mankind and Terry Funk
in a cage.
In the cage, and they reformed DX, and they went on a heel run. Their run from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, they were heels.
I would argue that they were heels up until the point that they started feuding with the Nation, and then the Nation parody is what solidified them as baby faces, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair, because I think by the time we got to,
come the highway to hell SummerSlam, Triple H was definitely the face in that ladder match.
Yeah, I was gonna say going into SummerSlam, I think that's when they did the change, because it's Triple H versus Rocky in
DX
in the ladder match.
Yeah, DX versus the Nation, basically.
Yeah, which I'll never forget that ladder match, because that's the one where Rock developed arthritis and couldn't reach for anything. Anyway, back to John Cena. So that's John Cena's first promo. His second fucking promo, where he came out and he was like, this one was not nearly as strong a promo, but I enjoyed it because he brought up the spinner belt and he was like, I turned your precious title into a toy, and he did a whole thing on that. This last one with Cody Rhodes was better. So like the first one was excellent. The first one touched my heart. The second one with the spinner belt, I was like, meh, all right, whatever. More of the same, but not as good. The third one, when he went after Cody, he was like, I've never had to leave to get people to like me. You had to leave. I'm like, he's not wrong.
No, I don't disagree. He definitely needed to escape the abyss that was Stardust, because obviously Stardust was going nowhere fast.
Well, look, the people that leave, they leave because of Vince. Ultimately,
a lot of times,
they leave because Vince. It's the Razor thing. Razor very famously talked about, is there any way, basically, can I be champion? Can I be in the main event scene? And Vince was like, no, I don't see you that way. I see you as a solid upper mid-card guy. I see you as a guy to put other guys over. I don't see you as
the guy,
as the guy in this company. And he was like, that I will go elsewhere. Whether or not they see me that way, they're certainly going to pay me that way. And fuck you and the horse you rode in on. And the way that Vince looked at Scott Hall is the way that a lot of guys get looked at. Cody Rhodes was one of them. So you have to go elsewhere. Let's put it this way. AJ Styles was looked at that way before he came into the company. He had to look at what AJ Styles had to do, and it wasn't the TNA stuff that got him into a place where Vince would accept him.
New Japan.
It was his New Japan stuff.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys, they have to go elsewhere, as JR says, learn a new hold, and then come back, and now you're a star.
Well, I would argue that AJ was made the night that he debuted at the Rumble, and the crowd reaction to him, too.
Well, that certainly helped, yes, but they had to sign him first. They weren't willing to sign him until then, and they weren't willing to sign him until his New Japan run.
Well, technically, they tried to sign him when WCW went out of business, and he turned them down.
He'd have been another Stardust, though.
He wouldn't have even made it to that level. He'd have never gotten out of developmental.
Yeah. So I've been talking a lot. What have you thought of the 3 promos?
So my issue is with regards to the most recent one here, and this is the one that I'm going to choose to focus on here. Okay. And I'm seeing more and more of it here is the thinly veiled shots at AEW that are coming across here, similar to like when AEW does it with the thinly veiled shots at the WWE. Number 1 doesn't care about number 2.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't know.
Like I get
that was always a Vince thing, and it came from the philosophy of people will. This is about making money, pal. And the way to make money is to create exclusivity.
Pretend they don't exist.
Yeah, there's no way. They can't do it anymore. Not since the internet started.
Well, but we've seen that the willingness to work with other promotions, though. We talked about the Natalya thing with her doing Bloodsport, and then her working for the NWA at Crockett Cup as well. We talked about Karrion Kross just did the Chris Bay benefit show for Future Stars of Wrestling. You're seeing more and more of a WWE influence coming to the indies, with the exception of the one promotion that maybe most people want to see them work with, just because the egos that are involved there on arguably both sides are too great for that to ever happen.
Yeah. So your point about the shots at AEW is what, though?
I think that you're aiming too insider, too smart mark with stuff like that. And I think that therein lies the problem, is that that's kind of what got WCW in trouble towards the end of the Vince Russo run, is they were focusing too much on a niche market, too much on the internet crowd, too much on the Meltzer crowd, too much on the people that were reading the dirt sheets and the Observer and the Torch and whatever, that Vince Russo was focusing on catering to them and managed to tank the entire fucking product in the process. I worry that if you don't maintain that line where everything just becomes a thinly veiled shot at, then what's the point?
So Gavin in here with a comment, but Triple H is insanely insecure and AEW got NXT taken away from him.
He's not wrong. Vince's knee-jerk reaction to NXT 2.0 was because Dynamite was beating NXT in the ratings.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. The shots at AEW, I don't disagree with your argument.
I don't like it when AEW does it either.
Yeah, I here's what I'm saying to you. I don't disagree with your argument, but I also don't care enough either. It doesn't really bother me. Though I think, see, here's the thing. Had Cody not gone to AEW, I don't think he'd be doing it. But I don't think there's any way to not talk about. He's minimizing Cody is what he's doing. And you can't minimize Cody without minimizing AEW.
And to be fair, the line being that he creates empires for billionaires, whereas Cody just takes money from their kid. It's a good line.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I didn't disagree with anything he said. Cody had to leave and create
a fresh,
but a smaller pond also. Cody for a while there was the tallest midget. I don't know if you can make that argument now, but back in those first, during the COVID years with AEW, like it was Cody, the Bucks, Kenny Omega, John Moxley, and then like the Joey Janela circus crew.
I mean, I don't know if Hangman Page would appreciate being called a circus member, but
I didn't know. But I mean, I guess you would. I guess if you had followed kind of if you didn't really follow New Japan and you really didn't know a lot about the Young Bucks and the people that they would have on their internet show, you didn't know who Hangman Page was.
Well, I would argue that if you were watching AEW, it's probably because you came over through a lot of the ROH stuff too, though.
Mhm.
Because the ROH stuff is kind of what set the basis for AEW, specifically
Sure.
that 2016, 2017, 2018 run
Well, I was
leading
gonna say,
to All In.
I was going to say that. Well, that very first All In show that was basically a Ring of Honor Super Pay Per View
Yes,
was what is the reason we have AEW today.
it was the catalyst. Yes,
Right. But again, I don't think John Cena's point about Cody is wrong. Cody got to be the champion in a promotion that was small and just starting up, and there's a tendency I think in pro wrestling fans to think that the rest of the world knows what the fuck it is they're looking at and talking about. The world, when people think of mixed martial arts, they say UFC. They don't mean UFC. They mean MMA. But they think that all there is UFC, even though there's PFL, there's been Bellator, there was Strikeforce, there, etc.
Similar to how the WWE is synonymous with pro wrestling. When people say pro wrestling, they say WWE.
Exactly. So there's a tendency to think that the guys that made up that first couple of years of AEW were known by the outside world. They weren't. Wrestling fans knew what New Japan was. Normies don't.
It was a niche following.
Right. So again, John Cena's line about you basically were the champion of a niche, whereas I'm the champion of champions is not wrong. And I think if you want to look at it as why are you taking shots at AEW? Okay, but he's not wrong in what he said, and it's a great way to cut Cody down, especially if you're talking about psychology and John Cena is trying to get Cody Rhodes to second guess himself because Cody Rhodes is a threat. He's the younger, hungrier. He's the current champion. He's the man right now. And so if John Cena is not only just sort of taking out his frustrations on the fans, but he's also basically wanting to get Cody to come into WrestleMania second guessing himself, he's doing an effective job of that.